Whether it's houses, tunnels, or even hospitals, no place is safe from the paranormal. In fact, it was tough narrowing it down to just 40, because there are so many haunted locations here in America, let alone other countries. So based on their history, reputation, and spookiness, we're counting down the most haunted places in America. The Winchester Mystery House. The Winchester Mystery House in San Jose, California was constructed under the supervision of Sarah Winchester. Sarah's husband was a rifle magnate, and after his passing, she was said to be haunted by the victims of the Winchester rifles. The house was under non-stop construction for 38 years. It is filled with corridors that lead to nowhere, staircases that seem to go up endlessly, and other odd features. Following Sarah's death, construction on the property immediately stopped, and it is now a tourist attraction. Though many still believe that it is haunted by the spirits of the Winchester rifles.
Bannerman's Island. Bannerman's Castle is located on Bannerman's Island in the Hudson River. The castle was built to become a massive arms company by Francis Bannerman VI, a businessman who dealt in military surplus for the Spanish-American War. It had a number of disastrous events, such as an accidental explosion of gunpowder in the 1920s, killing 3 people and injuring others. The whole island has a long history of legends and rumors. This is because of the early Native American tribes and their belief that the island was haunted and possessed by evil spirits.
The Whaley House. This house was home to the Whaley family, consisting of Thomas Whaley, his wife Anna Whaley, and their 6 children. Some of the family members have died due to illness or suicide, such as 18-month-old Thomas Jr., who passed away due to scarlet fever. The house has since been known as haunted, based on its strange noises or sightings. In 2005, Life magazine called Whaley House the most haunted house in America. Some visitors have reported seeing apparitions of Thomas or Anna Whaley, or even hearing footsteps around the home.
The George Stickney House. In the 1800s, George and Sylvia Stickney built this house in a very secluded and quiet area of Illinois. This was so that they could carry out their spiritualistic activities in peace. The house had a very strange design to assist the Stickneys in their seances, such as having no square corners in the entire house. Years later, the house was bought by a man named Roderick Smith. He lived there during the 1960s and often claimed that he would hear strange noises around the house. He believed that the house had become tainted by devil worshippers after the events of George and Sylvia's seances.
Sloss Furnaces. In 1882, Alabama's Sloss Furnaces began producing iron for the state for 90 years. The property was shut down in 1970 after it became no longer profitable for the US Pipe Company and is now a historical landmark for Alabama. The area has been the focus of numerous paranormal investigations and television programs about haunted locations. The site has been known as one of the nation's most haunted places, with reports of hundreds of unexplained occurrences over the years.
Hampton Lillibridge House. This three-story house was built in 1796 by Hampton Lillibridge himself. After he passed away, his wife remarried and abandoned the property. The house would pass through owner to owner until eventually becoming a boarding house. A sailor supposedly hung himself in the third floor during that time period. The deteriorating house was purchased by an antique dealer named Jim Williams in 1963 in the hopes of refining it. This is when strange incidents began to happen. During construction, a portion of the roof collapsed, killing one of the workers. Other builders claimed they would hear unnerving voices and footsteps all around the house. Sometimes the voices were above them when they would be on lower floors, and other times below them when they were on the upper floors. Pieces of construction equipment would often be thrown across the room as well. What's most disturbing is that Williams performed an exorcism on the house in an attempt to remove the evil spirits. The cleansing failed, causing the malicious entities to return within a week.
The Gribble House. Known as Savannah's most diabolic crime, the 1909 Savannah Axe murders took place in the Gribble House. On December 10, 1909, mother and daughter Eliza Gribble and Carrie Olander were found beaten to death in the house. Carrie was found in the hallway with her throat slit, and Eliza was found in a bedroom with her skull bashed open. A third woman named Maggie Hunter was discovered at the scene to be barely alive. She too had her throat slit. She lived for 3 more days before passing away in the Savannah hospital. Many were accused, but Maggie's husband, J.C. Hunter, was the only one who was fully tried for the murders. He was sentenced to death by hanging, but was granted a pardon by the governor and was released. Now, the house stands as a host of negative and paranormal energy.
Galveston, Texas. On September 8, 1900, the island was struck by a deadly hurricane, killing at least 6,000 to 8,000 people. Now Galveston stands as one of the most haunted cities in the United States. The city has many paranormal attractions and ghost stories, involving a man named Dash Beardsley, who claims to have witnessed wandering spirits before vanishing. Another hotspot for ghostly activity is the Gal's Hotel, considered to be truly terrifying by ghost hunters and island residents.
The Driscoll Hotel. The Driscoll Hotel in Austin, Texas is known for a large amount of paranormal activity. It was once known as the Hotel of Dreams when it was first bought by Lisa Lincoln Driscoll in the late 1800s. The hotel became one of the popular locations for politicians, celebrities, and more to conduct business. Driscoll himself truly loved the luxurious hotel that he had created in Austin, Texas. Upon his death, it is believed that his spirit remained on the property. Some individuals who worked in the hotel have claimed to continue to feel his presence even after he was laid to rest. Room 525 is also said to be notoriously haunted within the building. It is believed that 2 bridesmaids who were both on their honeymoons took their own lives in that bathroom. Whether this is true or not remains completely unknown. There is also a story about a young woman who took her own life on the 4th floor of the hotel. Some residents have claimed to have seen her in the corner of their eyes while on the 4th floor, but no other activity has been reported.
Franklin Castle. The Gothic mansion known as Franklin Castle has been ranked one of the most haunted places in Ohio. It was built by a German immigrant named Hans Tiedemann. Him and his family lived there, but were soon met with a series of cruel deaths. Their daughter Emma, for example, died due to diabetes, which at the time was a slow and painful death, as there was no known cure. The castle's dark origin made it the centre of legends and ghost tales, such as doors that explode off their hinges, lights that spin on their own, electric circuits that behave erratically, the inexplicable sound of a baby crying, and even a woman in black, who has been seen staring forlornly from a tiny window.
The whole house. Footsteps, voices, and a cold touch or bump by an unseen force are the usual reports that come from this haunted home. However, the notorious legend involves the devil baby. This urban legend is of a man who resided in the whole house, claiming that he would rather have a picture of the devil instead of the Virgin Mary in his home. The man had a child who was born with horns, pointed ears, scale-covered skin, and a tail. The baby was locked in an attic after a number of failed attempts to baptize him. It's also worth noting that the mother of the child heard strange noises whilst pregnant, and even died after the delivery of her newborn. The original owner of the house is known to have spoken to several friends about one of the front bedrooms on the second floor being haunted. She and her friend both thought they saw a woman in white ghost there.
Moon River Brewing Company. The building was originally a city hotel for well-known people of Georgia. It served as a hospital during the Savannah's yellow fever epidemic. Hundreds of people, mostly children, reportedly died on the upper floors of this building during one of these outbreaks. However, the most haunted part of this building is the basement, where a malicious spirit of a staff member has recently gotten a name. The name of Toby. It haunts and taunts anyone who dares to venture the downstairs.
St. Louis Cemetery, Number 1. St. Louis Cemetery Number 1 is one of 3 Roman Catholic cemeteries. It's said that this one in particular holds around 100,000 corpses, some of which were kept in bags and thrown into an above-ground vault due to high groundwater and lack of land. There have been a number of reports of paranormal activity surrounding the cemetery. The most notable is the notorious tomb of Marie Laveau. This particular woman is known as the Grande Voodoo Queen. Many believe that her spirit haunts the graveyard and all individuals who attempt to disrupt her rest or awaken her.
The La Lurie House. New Orleans is often cited as the most haunted city in the United States, and one of its most popular attractions is the La Lurie House. In 1832, Dr. Louis La Lurie and his beautiful wife Delphine moved into this new home. They were incredibly wealthy and owned many slaves, some of which were rumored to entertain Madame La Lurie, even at the cost of their own lives. On April 10, 1834, a fire broke out in the La Lurie house. When a fireman came to the scene, he made a gruesome discovery. Dozens of slaves were reportedly chained to the wall in a secret attic. Some were kept in cages, others had their body parts mutilated, and some even cried out, begging to be put out of their pain and misery. It appeared as though Madame La Lurie was carrying out malicious experiments beyond anything imaginable. People wanted her to be put to justice, but she and her husband fled. Her tombstone was later discovered in the St. Louis Cemetery, indicating that she died in 1842. Many have reported seeing the spirit of a young slave girl fleeing across the La Lurie roof, and terrifying screams coming from within the house. Those who stayed there would immediately leave after one night.
"14 West 10th Street. Also known as the House of Death, 14 West 10th Street is said to be home to 22 ghosts, including the famous Mark Twain, who resided there in 1900. According to the New York Post, author Jan Bartel and her husband moved into the top floor apartment of this home when it was reworked to fit more families inside. She almost immediately felt a presence she described as a monstrous moving shadow, which she would later write about in her novels. Recently, a lawyer named Joel Steinberg was charged with manslaughter for beating his illegally adopted daughter to death while staying in the building.
The Myrtles Plantation. Built in 1796, the Myrtles Plantation's dark history gave it the title as one of America's most haunted homes. Legend has it that roughly 10 people have been murdered in that house, sometimes in a gruesome fashion, including a mom and her 2 children being poisoned. Visitors have reported hearing footsteps on the stairs at odd hours, rattling doorknobs and locks, unusual smells, rapidly changing room temperatures, moved furniture, and objects simply disappearing. The most well-known ghost is that of a little girl named Chloe, who was apparently a slave to the owners of the plantation. Various legends detail different stories about what happened to Chloe, but one element that they all share is that she now haunts the home wearing a green turban.
The Marshall House. The Marshall House was built during the Civil War and was used as a hospital by a general named General Sherman. It housed hundreds of wounded soldiers, many of whom died in that hospital or had their limbs amputated. During a recent renovation, human remains were discovered buried in the yard under the floorboards. It is believed today that these bones were amputated limbs of soldiers, which were dumped on the hotel grounds due to the lack of sufficient disposable means. Both staff and guests frequently report seeing men wearing Civil War uniforms. Guests have awoken with their arm outstretched as if a nurse was taking their pulse, and other reports include water faucets being turned on, doorknobs wobbling, and the sounds of unseen children.
The Transalgany Lunatic Asylum. Back in the 19th century, asylums were the dumping grounds for society's unwanted. This building was originally meant to treat patients with mental disorders, but it became overcrowded and underfunded. Lobotomies and murders took place before it officially closed down in 1994. Now the hospital is believed to be haunted by the many tortured patients who inhabited the area, including the lingering spirit of a little girl named Lily.
Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. In the small island of trees known as the Rubio Woods Forest, there is a cemetery called the Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. In the 1960s, vandals attacked the property by knocking over tombstones and opening up caskets. Over the years, more than 100 reports of paranormal phenomenon have taken place. The area is known for its sightings of flying orbs of light around the cemetery and above the tombstones.
The Lincoln Theater. In 1915, the Decatur Hotel was caught in a fire, killing an unknown amount of people and taking the building down. The Lincoln Theater was built over it 1 year later and first opened on October 27, 1916. One night, a man was working high above the stage when he slipped and fell. He tried to catch himself before plummeting to the ground, but his arm was caught between two beams and was torn from his shoulder. The next day, he was found dead. Throughout the years, many people have reported hearing sounds and footsteps in the empty theater. Reports of whispering and voices have also been heard as well, and a strange figure will be seen in the balcony every now and then.
The Queen Mary. In Long Beach Harbor, there is the HMS Queen Mary, a 1,000-foot ship that made 1,001 successful Atlantic crossings until she was eventually put away after the war broke out in 1939. Soon, it became a luxury hotel that is now said to be called the home to a number of ghostly encounters. These include ghostly children playing by the pool, a dark-haired man in a 30s suit, the spirit of a 17-year-old sailor that was killed while trying to escape a fire, lights turning on in the middle of the night, and even phones ringing with no one on the other end of the line. There's so much more ghostly activity in the Queen Mary, including an infamous room, B340, which can no longer be rented due to all of the paranormal activity that is seen in there.
Mount Misery Road. This road in Suffolk County, New York, was considered a cursed area by early Native American tribes. The area's land was unfarmable, and its steep hills and lack of lights caused many accidents to travellers. Then, in the 1700s, it's said that a mental asylum built near the road was burnt to the ground by a distraught patient who killed herself in the fire. Now her spirit wanders the road in her white uniform.
The Lemp Mansion. A man named Adam Lemp moved from Germany to America in 1838 to start his own brewery company known as Lemp. By the time of his death, his son William Lemp began a major expansion of the brewery, and soon the Lemp family was powerful and wealthy. However, they were also surrounded by tragedy. Some say the family was even cursed. William's favourite son, Frederick Lemp, died from a heart attack in 1901. The devastated William Lemp shot himself on February 13, 1904, causing Frederick's son, William Jr., to take over the family business. His mother died of cancer on April 16, 1906, and his sister shot herself on March 20, 1920. William Jr. slipped into depression and shot himself on December 29, 1922, in the exact same room as his grandfather. Now the mansion is said to be haunted by the distraught members of the Lemp family.
Shanghai Tunnel. During the 1850s, Portland, Oregon was known as the Shanghai capital of the world. Shanghailing refers to the act of kidnapping people and turning them into slaves to serve as sailors. This was because many of the captain's original sailors left due to the excitement of the gold rush. These tunnels would be where the prisoners were kept and trapped in. Some have even died. Many visitors who walk the tunnels in Portland have stated that they have heard moans, talking, screaming, and even the sound of crying. It is also believed that the spirit of a woman named Nina haunts the area. She was sedated by drugs before being thrown into the tunnels for captivity. Some have claimed to smell her perfume, have their clothes tugged on, and even witnessed her apparition.
The Cameron House. Named after Donaldina Cameron, this house was used to hide illegally smuggled Chinese girls. It had secret doors and sealed passages to hide the girls from police raids. In 1906, a fire struck the house, and an unknown number of trapped women were killed in the event. The Cameron House was reworked into a church, but still has some unusual features. The basement doors are completely sealed off, and every door contains a red and a gold charm to supposedly keep the spirits contained. Some doors even have signs that say, "Do not enter." Photographs taken inside the house have shown strange white figures in the background.
The Stanley Hotel. This hotel is quite known for its ghostly activity. Reports of apparitions of children, lights switching on and off, and objects moving on their own have taken place there. The infamous room 217 is where chambermaid Elizabeth Wilson suffered a massive explosion in the summer of 1911. There was a thunderstorm that cut off all the power, and the staff had to light the backup gas lamps. When Elizabeth entered room 217 with her lit candle, there was an unknown gas leak which exploded the room in an instant. She eventually recovered and continued to work until her death in the 1950s. It is said that her spirit now haunts the Stanley Hotel.
St. Augustine Lighthouse. The legend goes that two little girls died on site during construction. A man named Heiser Capiti was hired to renovate the lighthouse in the 1800s. His two daughters were playing with a rail car that was used to bring supplies to the workers. The car suddenly span out of control and fell into the water below, drowning the children. Visitors report hearing a female crying, "Help me," inside of the tower, as well as mysterious lights and footsteps. The owner, Dr. Alan Ballard, swore he would never leave the lighthouse after the government threatened to take it by eminent domain, in exchange for nothing. Some say he kept his vow, and his spirit can be seen around the property.
Devil School. In Jacksonville, Florida, there is a infamous Devil School, an abandoned school with a unusually sadistic history. First, rumor has it that the furnace blew up sometime in the 1960s, killing several students and faculty members. Next, the school's principal was a cannibal, killing off anyone who was sent to his office, and using his closet as a meat locker. Finally, the janitor went berserk one day and slaughtered a bunch of kids, leaving their blood stains on the walls. Priests were called in to cleanse the area and exorcise demons from within. But the school was so haunted that teachers still refused to work there, causing it to shut down.
The Villisca Axe Murder House. In June of 1912, the Moore family and two friends were found bludgeoned to death by a nearby neighbor. The case was never solved and remains open to this day. The house contains many secrets, from the identity of the murderer to just how he was able to carry his malicious deeds without awakening any of the members of the house. According to visitors, apparitions of a man with an axe are said to haunt the house, appearing at the foot of the bed in the master bedroom. The cries of children can also be heard in the rooms above.
The Athens Lunatic Asylum. The Athens Lunatic Asylum, also known as The Ridges, was one of Ohio's largest insane asylums for the mentally ill and operated from 1874 until 1993. The hospital held many violent patients, mostly returning Civil War soldiers who were suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. The building is notorious for being the site of hundreds of lobotomies on unwanted family members for money. It is now the center of numerous ghost stories, including a deaf-mute patient named Margaret. She mysteriously vanished and was found in an abandoned ward that was once used for patients with infectious illnesses. Her body was found naked, and her decomposing stains can still be seen to this day.
$10,050 Cielo Drive. On August 9th, 1969, 26-year-old Sharon Tate and her 4 guests were all murdered in their home by Charles Manson. It became one of the most tragic events in Hollywood, as Sharon at the time was also 8 months pregnant. She was only 2 weeks away from giving birth. The house was later brought down in 1999 to be reworked into a new home. During construction, a worker said he heard voices and footsteps coming from the top floor of the building. Others claimed hearing the same noises and feeling a cold breeze on the back of their necks. Then, in July 2004, a man named Oman, who moved into the new home, woke from a deep sleep at 2 AM to find a full-body apparition at the bottom of his bed.
The Waverly Hills Sanatorium. This medical facility, designed to treat 40 to 50 tuberculosis patients in the early 1900s. At the time, tuberculosis was a serious disease, and patients had to be isolated from the public to prevent it from being spread. The facility remained open until 1961, until the discovery of an antibiotic that successfully treated and cured tuberculosis grew in popularity, causing the facility to no longer be needed. Nowadays, the sanitarium is said to be one of the most haunted places in America, including a legend about Room 502. The legend goes that a nurse committed suicide in that room after finding out that she was pregnant with the owner's child and contracted tuberculosis.
The Union Cemetery. This cemetery in Connecticut is considered by many to be the most haunted cemetery in the United States. The most famous legend is the mysterious Lady in White, who is said to haunt the area. She is said to have long black hair and is often seen wearing a white nightgown and a bonnet. Several witnesses, including nearby citizens, policemen and firemen, have reported catching a glimpse of the Lady in White. Another popular legend involves a figure concealed in the shadows who will stare at passengers with his invoking red eyes.
Devil's Den. The Devil's Den is a rocky outcropping of boulders and shrubs that was the site of a 3-day battle during the Civil War. This bloody battle resulted in 51,000 deaths and is considered to be the reason why Gettysburg is as haunted as it is now. The Devil's Den is known as the most active area. Photographer Alexander Gardner was at the scene taking pictures when the battle ended. One iconic photo shows the body of a fallen soldier in the Devil's Den. Because these men were not in their final resting place, their souls never found peace and are still there. Visitors to the park often have trouble trying to take photos of the site. pictures often come out blurry and unusable, and cameras have a strange way of suddenly dying whenever they are turned on in that area.
The Sally House. This house was brought to national attention when Deborah and Tony Pickman lived there from 1992 to 1994. They documented the disturbing encounters they experienced, such as physical attacks and burnt fingerprints on their walls. The Sally House got its name from the daughter of a family who used to live there. She had an imaginary friend named Sally, and she is believed to now be one of the spirits haunting the house. Tony has claimed to see Sally every now and again, sometimes even feeling her ominous presence while he was sleeping. Coincidentally or not, there was one person who owned the house in the 1940s who had a daughter named Sally, although she did not die in the house or at a young age.
Eastern State Penitentiary. Having one of the most haunting histories a building can have, this building housed over 80,000 inmates in absolute solitary confinement. The idea was that isolation would cure the prisoners and they would find God. Masks were placed on their faces whenever they were outside of their cells to prevent communication with other prisoners. This instead drove them insane, causing over 1,000 deaths by illnesses, 50 suicides, and over a dozen brutal murders. Tourists claim there have been mysterious footsteps in the yard, the sound of pacing in empty cells, and strange noises drifting through the hallways. Cell Block 12 has become infamous for reports of chilling laughter, Cell Block 6 has shadowy figures darting along the walls, and Cell Block 4 for visions of ghostly faces. Many people have reported seeing a silhouette of a guard in one of the towers.
The Bell Witch Cave. In 1817, a farmer named John Bell lived with his family in his home in Adams, Tennessee. The family was constantly under attack by an evil spirit, or a witch, the neighbour of John Bell, who swore she would haunt him and his descendants. The Bell Witch Cave is said to be the home to the entity, who still resides there to this day. It is now open to the public, and there have been many reports of strange paranormal activity. The location has inspired many films such as The Blair Witch Project, Bell Witch Haunting, and An American Haunting.
The Joshua Ward House. This house was built upon a different house that used to belong to George, the Strangler, Corwin. He was notorious for interrogating those who were accused of being witches in an unusually cruel manner, such as tying them by their necks until blood started rushing from their nose. Corwin died in 1697, and his body was buried beneath where the Joshua Ward House is now. Because of this, it is often said that 3 spirits haunt the house, the most famous being the ghost of an innocent woman who was killed after being accused of being a witch. She was photographed by a visiting realtor and remains one of the most disturbing, ghostly of images.
Alcatraz Prison. The Alcatraz prison was a maximum security facility that housed some of the worst criminals at the time. It was one of the toughest prisons in America, and prisoners would often report acts of brutality and cruelty. The now closed prison contains the sound of ghostly footsteps, cell doors opening and closing, moans, cries, and their chains rattling as they echo through the hallway. A psychic who visited the area claimed to identify a spirit named the Butcher. Prison records also confirmed that a mob hitman named Abby Maldowitz, who was also nicknamed a butcher, was killed by a fellow inmate in the laundry area.
The Gettysburg Battlefield. The Gettysburg Battlefield is the location of one of the bloodiest battles of the Civil War. Nearly 8,000 Confederate and Union soldiers were killed there on July 3, 1863. Some report over 10,000 men died in the Battle of Gettysburg. The location is now famous for its historical significance, and many tourists travel to Pennsylvania to visit the battlefield. Many have reported sightings of ghost soldiers, sounds of battle, screams, moans, recorded EVP, and even video. In fact, one of the most compelling ghost videos was shot there in 2001.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this video today. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to click like, share, and subscribe for more. The featured narrators in today's video was Blame It on George, That Creepy Reading, Stephanie Swan Quills, That Creepy Pasta Guy, and myself, Let's Read. Make sure you click the annotations in the video or links in the description, and be sure to subscribe to all our awesome channels. Alright everybody, you stay spooky, and we'll see you soon.